We're done. Thank you. Thank you very much. If you want a copy, email.
Okay.
That'll run for 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
Cheap imitation, Kodak Playsport.
And we're off like a herd of turtles.
And it has been upside down in Muskoma Lake, attached to the boom on my sailboat.
Now this is a 3-mile adventure to the summit of Mount Washington, 6,288 feet above sea level. Makes it the tallest mountain in the northeastern United States. And it's the second tallest mountain east of the Mississippi, whose summit rises above tree line. And the base station here is at 2,700 feet, so our 3-mile trip is an elevation gain of about 3,600 feet. That'll take us through a few different climate zones, the uppermost of which is technically defined as an Arctic tundra. And I'm guessing that you didn't think you were riding to the Arctic Circle today. But I'm really talking about what you will see and won't see, and not so much about what you're going to feel. There aren't any trees up there. It's a very harsh growing environment, some grass and moss and a lot of rocks. As we climb the mountain, you'll notice the trees getting shorter and shorter until they disappear altogether at about 5,000 feet, the official tree line. More about that in a second. 5,000 feet is the tree line. That's about half the elevation of tree line out west in the Rockies, where it's around 10 or 11,000 feet. The reason for that is because of the particularly harsh weather that prevails up on these summits. I'll explain more about that as we climb the mountain. Crossing a river here called the Ammonoosuc River, and this bridge here is brand new. We just installed it in March because last fall at Halloween time we had a terrible nor'easter storm here. And take a look up to the right. You see that building up on the ridge line there. The Ammonoosuc River comes from just the other side of that building. There's two small mountaintop tarns. Those are glacially carved lakes. They're called the Lakes of the Clouds. And the Ammonoosuc River in that storm swelled up into a raging torrent. It totally destroyed our old trestle and shut us down for the last month of the season last fall. And in March, when the construction conditions were a little bit more beneficial, we got the new one installed and we're good to go. That building up on the summit there is called the Lakes of the Clouds hut. It's a hiker's hut, and it's reachable only by foot. You gotta hike up there, no roads. And it's run by the Appalachian Mountain Club. They operate 8 of these huts throughout the high peaks of New Hampshire, all along the Appalachian Trail. They're spaced about half a day's hike apart, and each one of them has a full kitchen and bunk rooms. So if you're on a multi-day hike up here in the mountains, you can make a reservation and spend the night in one of these huts, have a home-cooked dinner and breakfast cooked by college students and recent graduates that crew the hut. All right, so Joe has put the pedal to the metal, and just like that, we're at our top cruising speed, 5.5 miles an hour. Don't let the wind blow your hats off, at least down here anyway. At that speed, we'll reach the summit in about 40 to 45 minutes. And so you're welcome to get up and move around the train now. Now, the first thing most people are curious about is, how does this work? How is it that a train can climb a mountain? And it has mainly to do with this third rail running up the middle of the track here, which is called a rack. The rack consists of 2 parallel L-bars that are connected by a series of perpendicular spools or pins that are 4 inches apart. The whole thing kind of looks like a bicycle chain running up all the way to the summit. And if you were to take a look underneath the locomotive, you'd see 4 heavy-duty steel gears called cogs, hence the name of the railway. And they look kind of like these logos on the end of your benches here, which sort of look like bicycle sprockets. So much like a bicycle sprocket on the chain, as the locomotive drives the cogs, the teeth on the cogs engage between the spools on the rack and pull us up the mountain. and that provides 100% of the locomotion as well as the braking. The wheels on the rails are freewheeling; those are not being driven at all. Everything happens through the rack and the cog. Hey, look over there, it's a moose. With some duct tape on its nose. Alright, sorry about that. But that's a lot of fun for us brakemen. It was a lot easier before they started that construction and cleared out a lot of trees. It was much more inconspicuous before that. So the whole thing works through the rack and the cogs. And it's the same technology that's been used on the cog railway since it was built almost 150 years ago. It opened in 1869, and the system was the genius of a man named Sylvester Marsh. He was a New Hampshire native. He was born and raised in the small town of Campton, just south of here, at the very beginning of the 19th century. And like many in his generation, he headed westward seeking his fortune, which he found in the meatpacking business out in Chicago. And he was a very mechanically inclined young man, and very innovative. While he was out there, he secured a number of patents, and later in life he returned to his native New Hampshire with his fortune and his patents. And one day during the 1850s, he decided to climb Mount Washington, which very few people did back then. And he really didn't know what to expect. He was completely unprepared with no adequate clothing or gear when the weather turned against him while he was up there. And he was lucky to make it back down alive without suffering exposure. When he did, he vowed to find a better way to go up the mountain and to get people up the mountain. And he came up with this rack and cog system, developed a prototype, and then in 1858 he headed down to Concord, the state capital, paid a visit to the state legislature, seeking a charter to be permitted to build the railway on the mountain. And he encountered quite a bit of skepticism while he was down there. The legislators had a hard time wrapping their brains around the idea that a train could climb a mountain. They simply refused to believe it. They thought Sylvester Marsh was a nutcase, and they laughed him out of the State House. But eventually they did issue the charter. They told him, here you go, here's your charter. It's good for 5 years. Good luck with that. And oh, by the way, as soon as you reach the summit with that train of yours, you might as well keep on going to the moon. But Sylvester got the last laugh because he completed construction of the railway in just 3 years, well ahead of the expiration of the charter. He waited out the Civil War, started construction in 1866, and with 300 men he had it open and running by July 3rd, 1869. And among our earliest passengers was U.S. President Ulysses S. Grant. He was a sitting president at the time. And after Sylvester Marsh passed away in the 1880s, the railway was owned and operated by the Boston and Maine Railroad. The B&M owned it for a period of about 50 or 60 years down to the Great Depression in the 1930s. And during that time, they fully integrated the cog railway into their railroad system here in northern New England. So it was possible during that time to travel entirely by train from Grand Central Terminal in New York City all the way to the summit of Mount Washington and spend the night in the Summit House Hotel, which was built and operated by the cog railway. Summit House Hotel is no longer there. It was replaced in 1980 by the Sherman Adams Visitors Center, which is the building we're going to be letting you off at this morning. And that was after the state of New Hampshire took over and established the Mount Washington State Park up there. The Visitor Center is a modern building with restrooms, cafeteria, gift shop, all of that operated by the state of New Hampshire. And a couple of things not operated by the state up there. There's a little U.S. post office just inside the main entrance that the cog railway operates. So if you want to send a friend a postcard with a Mount Washington postmark on it, you can do that up here at the summit. And then the Mount Washington Weather Observatory, which a nonprofit organization established in the 1930s, does a lot of weather research, provides daily forecasts. They run a weather museum down on the ground level of the Adams building. And so if there's anything I tell you about the weather on the mountain here that strikes an interest, you might want to check that out. They are a non-profit organization, and one of their main fundraising avenues is that museum, so they charge a $2 admission to get in. Now, our current owners bought the railway in 1983, and they've been trying to strike a balance between respecting the history of the railway while still taking advantage of modern technology. So we still run steam trains once a day through most of the season, twice a day in July and August. The rest of the trains are powered by biodiesel locomotives that run on a blend of 80% diesel fuel, 20% fry-later fat, the stuff that French fries are cooked in, and we get that from restaurants in the area here. Burns much more cleanly and efficiently than coal. And all the locomotives and coaches were designed and built right here on site by Cog Railway personnel down in our shops. This first major hill we've been climbing here is called Cold Spring Hill. It's the second steepest section of the railway. The overall average grade over the 3-mile distance is about 25%, meaning that for every 100 feet we travel, we gain 25 feet of elevation. It's a pretty steep grade. On a conventional railroad. A 4 to 7% grade would be considered steep. The particular grade here on Cold Spring Hill is about 34%. And we're approaching the switch up here where we're going to be going on a double track. And you'll notice to the left of the switch here, there's a little building with solar panels on the roof. And those provide the juice to a battery inside the building that powers this orange hydraulic arm down to the right of the switch. And that's what mechanically slides this Y section of switch track back and forth. Switches are operated by the engineers from the cab with a remote control device. It's a lot easier than it was up until about 12 or 15 years ago, when the brakeman had to hop off the train and physically manipulate 8 sections of heavy steel rail in order to throw a switch. Now, I was just signaling Joe there just to confirm for him that the switch is in position, properly placed, and it's safe for us to proceed.
Good idea.
It's a very cheap imitation of a GoPro. Kodak Playsport.
But it ends up pretty good in the videos.
Oh yeah, I have a different mount to put it on the boom of my sailboat. And when I tip the sailboat over, it goes right underneath the water and photographs.
Wow. Nice.
And the water tank straight ahead here, that's for the steam trains. The steam locomotives require 1,000 gallons of water to make a single trip to the summit, but they can only carry about 700 gallons at a time. So they have to stop here on the way up the mountain to top off the tank in order to complete the trip. Because of that, the tank is situated extremely closely to the tracks. So I'm going to ask everybody on the left side of the train here to please keep your hands, your heads, cameras inside the windows as we pass by. We literally pass within about 8 or 9 inches of this tank. So stay safe, everybody. And you see on the side here, it's called the Wombeck tank. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm told that the Wombeck is a native Abenaki term that roughly translates as sound of head hitting wooden post. Awesome. Now, the steamers have to heat up all that water, and they do so by burning coal. And it takes 1 ton of coal to make a single trip to the summit. A ton of coal and 1,000 gallons of water. Compare that to these biodiesels, which burn between 16 and 20 gallons of biodiesel fuel on a single trip. And you can see the efficiencies that we've gained since we converted 10 years ago, 2008. Before that, it was all steam. But there's still plenty of steam enthusiasts out there that want to ride steam, and we have no trouble selling out the steam trains. In fact, you got to make a reservation in advance really to get on the steam train. Here comes one of the 9:30 train coming down the mountain, and as it passes us, you can take a look underneath the locomotive, and you'll see the cogs and how they engage the rack to propel the train, as I was explaining earlier. The peak up to the left there, partially in the clouds, that's Mount Clay. And then we have a partial clearing over here to the right. We can look across the Ammonoosuc Ravine to Mount Monroe, which is the very top of it is hidden in the clouds there. The Lakes of the Clouds hut is just to the left. Now there are 9 presidential peaks here, 4 to the north of Mount Washington and 4 to the south. And Mount Clay is one of the northern presidentials. Now you might be scratching your head saying, I don't remember a President Clay. And you're right, there are 2 of the 9 are named for non-presidents. Clay is named for Senator Henry Clay from Kentucky. And then straight to our right is Mount Franklin, Ben Franklin. Now the Lakes of the Clouds hut, which is directly to our right, is on a 9-mile hiking loop that begins at our base station, goes past the hut and up to the summit, continues off the summit to the north, and that entire stretch from the hut over the summit and over to the other side of Mount Clay there is the Appalachian Trail. And then it meets up with a trail called the Jewel Trail, which runs parallel to us on the left and north side of the train here. And we may get a look at it in a moment here when we pop above these trees. Depending on how low the clouds go, you should be able to see the ridge line over there. And then the Jewel Trail returns to our base station. You might have noticed a sign to the left of the train as we were leaving a station for the Jewel Trail. It takes most people that hike to the summit that way. 9 miles takes them a better part of a day to do it. A lot of people choose to split it into 2 days and spend the night in the Lakes of the Clouds hut. But there are hiking trails all over these mountains, and you can summit any of these peaks from any direction that you like. And now we're getting a look at the Jewel Trail over there to the left. It goes all along that ridge line. That's all above the trees until pretty much directly to the left of the train here, where it begins to drop below the trees. Now, just to give you a kind of a mental picture of the bird's eye view of Mount Washington, and if you were to hover over it in a helicopter looking down on it, what it reminds me of is a massive European Gothic cathedral where the summit is the steeple, and then you have a series of flying buttresses extending off of that in all 4 directions. Those are the ridges, and then between those flying buttresses, deep ravines, and you can kind of get a feel for that now. Our right of way, our tracks run right up one of those ridges. And to our right and south is the Ammonoosuc Ravine, where the Ammonoosuc River comes from. To the left and north here is Bird's Ravine. And these western ravines, the ravines on the western side of the mountain, have relatively gentle upslope to them. The ravines on the other sides, the north, east, and southeast, are glacial cirques that were carved out by the glaciers. They have much more dramatic and deeper drop-offs over there. So just kind of an interesting geological difference on the 2 sides of the mountain here. And we've reached enough elevation gain here that you're going to begin to notice the deciduous leaf-bearing trees giving way to a lot more coniferous trees. And those coniferous trees are getting shorter and shorter. And a lot more weather-beaten, as you can see to the right of the switch here. Look at the trunks of these trees. That's they're not diseased. That's the beating they take from the winds up here. Birch Ravine down here to the left between us and the Jewel Trail Ridge there. It's named for Henry Burt, and he published a newspaper from the summit of Mount Washington back in the 19th century. It was called Among the Clouds. It was a daily newspaper. It was delivered every morning down these tracks, but not aboard a train. It was on a sled or a slide board, which was basically a piece of wood with some wheels and a rudimentary handbrake on it. A very brave individual on top of it. They were called Devil's Shingles. You can see one on display in the museum down at the base station when you get back. The Devil's Shingles were developed by the original track crew, the guys that built the railway back in the 1860s. got further up the mountain with the tracks, they got more and more impatient to get home at night, didn't want to wait for the slow trains to bring them down the hill, so they developed these devil's shingles. Reportedly the fastest trip on a devil's shingle from base to summit, and remember it's a 3-mile trip, was 2 minutes and 45 seconds. And someone tried to break that record, and that didn't end well. And so not surprisingly, around 1910, 1915, the state of New Hampshire, the live free or die state, outlawed the devil's shingles. And I'm thinking that if the live free or die state is outlawing something, it was probably a pretty insane idea to start with. Now up here to our right we got a building approaching. It's called the Halfway House because it's halfway to the summit elevation-wise. And don't let it play tricks on your eyes. This building is perfectly level. We're not. And you will be able to see that if you look in the window to the right here at our reflection as we pass by. And you can appreciate the steepness of our ascent of the mountain. Now, that was built in the 19th century. Its original purpose was to store wood, which fueled the locomotives before they converted to coal. But also back then, the trains made a stop at the Halfway House. And that is because back then the coaches were open air, and so they'd stop and distribute blankets to the passengers so everybody could remain comfortable for the rest of the trip up to the summit. Now up ahead here to the right of the tracks, you can see a little rock object with a white background behind it, so you can see it more sharply. It's a remarkable likeness of the Old Man of the Mountain, which is the state symbol of New Hampshire. You see that symbol on our quarters, our license plates, state highway signs, among other things. The original Old Man of the Mountain was a much larger rock formation that hung from the cliffs of Cannon Mountain over in Franconia Notch. That one's no longer there. It fell to the valley below in 2003, but this one looks remarkably like it, and like the original, it's completely natural. Nobody chiseled anything to form the face. They did turn this rock so that it is oriented towards the tracks, and you can see the face more clearly. And now you can, as we're getting closer here, you see the forehead up top, the nose sticking out, a little notch there for the mouth, and the sharp protruding jaw at the bottom. Looks a little bit like Jay Leno. He was here last summer. He got to see himself in the mountain. And as we pass it by, you can see it looks just like any other rock. It's all in the angle that you look at it from. Now, straight ahead here is perhaps the most dramatic part of the trip. This is a 300-foot-long trestle called Jacob's Ladder. It rises to 30 feet off the ground, has a 30-degree bend to the left. It's at 4,725 feet above sea level, and it's the steepest section of the railway, at a grade of 37.4%. And to illustrate the steepness of that grade, if you can see how I'm standing right now, my feet are about 2 feet inside the doorway, and my head's about 2 feet outside the doorway, and I'm standing on the vertical with no need to brace myself at all. If I stood perpendicular to the ceiling, I'd fall down the aisle. You can feel that grade if you stand up. But another indicator is the fact that the folks here in the front row, your heads are about 14 feet higher than the people down in the back row. this elevation. It's the best they can do. They are fully mature trees, and some of them may be as much as 100 years old or older. And if there's anybody on the train that has a problem with heights, I strongly recommend not looking down to the left. So we're looking all the way down to the floor of Birch Ravine down there, about 800 feet down. And I know that we don't have any kids on board, but some of you kids at heart, you might get a kick out of seeing Mount Washington's only amphibian. Just to the right of the tracks here, this little green guy. This is Rocky the Cog Frog. Right up ahead here to the right. And in addition to being here to entertain the kids, he's also one of several landmarks along the railway that help the brakemen on the steam trains. They know where they are on the railway when the grade is changing, and they can adjust their braking accordingly. Now, just ahead here and disappearing into the fog is another trestle. This one's called Long Trestle. And Long Trestle is the third steepest section of the railway. The grade is about 31%. And this is actually Long Trestle 2. Long Trestle 1 was totally destroyed in New England's worst hurricane in 1938. And if you look down to the left of the tracks here, you can see a lot of the debris from the old Long Trestle down there. Now, about 40 or 50 yards ahead here at the other end of Long Trestle is the official tree line at 5,000 feet above sea level. And as I said, that's about half the elevation of the tree line out west. And that's because of the particularly harsh weather that prevails up here. And that is, harsh weather in turn is due to an accident of geography and the way these mountains are situated in relation to three major weather systems that all converge here at these summits, coming primarily from the northwest out of Canada, but also up the Ohio River Valley from the southwest, which I believe is our influence today, and from the east off the Atlantic Ocean, all convening here and making for a very spicy mix of weather. They call Mount Washington home of the world's worst weather. Believe me, that's not an exaggeration. And so just to kind of give you some idea of all that, you see the gentle upslope to the ravines here, and they tighten up as they come up higher. So like water, when wind hits a tight space, it tends to speed up. And so not surprisingly, back in 1934, the Mount Washington Weather Observatory recorded a record land wind speed at the summit of Mount Washington. The fastest land wind speed ever recorded by man, 231 miles an hour. And we don't really know if that's the fastest ever, because that's what they recorded until the instruments blew off the mountain. Now, the all-time high temperature at the summit of Mount Washington is 72 degrees Fahrenheit. It's never been warmer than that at the summit of Mount Washington. We hit 71 this July, almost tied it. The all-time low is 39 below. That's no wind chill. With the wind chill well below 100 below, and those are instant frostbite temperatures. And it can snow up here any month of the year, including July and August. The average snowfall for July and August is 1/10 of an inch. And we did have a trace in August this year. The average snowfall for September is 2.2 inches. And we have had a trace so far this month. Now, all of that is to say that people don't realize all of this. And because this mountain's only a little more than 6,000 feet high, which is really not world class as far as mountain elevations go, they tend to underestimate it. And because it's pretty accessible to two major population centers, Boston and New York, and it's relatively easy to climb up, people come up here and quickly get into trouble. They come unprepared without adequate clothing and gear, and so we still have search and rescues on this mountain all the time. We've had 3 in the last month alone, and they usually have to do with people who are unprepared. We had a couple of hikers that had no headlamps or flashlights and didn't plan for, the worst case scenario. They ended up being out here after dark, and they got lost and needed to be rescued. We had a 70-something-year-old couple, supposedly experienced hikers. In early August, they came up here in shorts and a t-shirt. It's summertime, right? They had no other clothing, no outerwear or anything, and when they ended up being out here at 9:30 at night, the temperatures hit 30 32 degrees Fahrenheit, freezing. She suffered hypothermia. That had a happy ending. She was successfully rescued, but not all of them do. And since the beginning of the 19th century, almost 200 people have perished on this mountain. So it's not a place to be taken lightly. All right. You might have noticed all these little rock piles, 4-foot high piles of rocks on either side of the train. Those mark the hiking trails. They're called cairns, C-A-I-R-N-S. And today's a good day to figure out what they're for. In the really foggy weather, there's a lot of them, they're really close together, so in this kind of foggy weather, they keep the hikers from getting lost, which is pretty important. And so we had a trail going right under the tracks. If you look back down to the left there, see the trail parallels our tracks about 30 yards to our left, but you see a drop-off down there, and it continues immediately to our left here. That's a very dramatic drop-off about 30 yards out. It drops a full 1,000 feet all the way down to the floor of what's called the Great Gulf, one of these glacial cirques. It's a huge ravine that separates us from the four peaks of the northern Presidential Mountains. In addition to Mount Clay, closest to the train here, we've got Mounts Jefferson, Adams, and Madison. Mount Adams is the second tallest mountain in New Hampshire. It's 1 foot short of 5,800 feet. And people come up here in the springtime and they ski down the near wall of the Great Gulf here. We see people hiking up with skis on their backs. Right over here to our left. Obviously expert skiers. But there's still enough snow. They come up here as late as first, second week of June.
Where is Tuckerman? Where is Tuckerman?
So the question was, where's Tuckerman's ravine? And that is the ski ravine. That's where all the snow ends up. It's on the southeast side of the mountain. Because of the prevailing northwesterly winds, almost all the snow that falls at the summit, an average of 280 inches, ends up in Tuckerman's ravine. So that's where most of the skiers go. And we're slowing down a little bit just to maintain our safe distance from the train ahead of us. You just see his taillights there. Be a little extra cautious in the fog like this. And we've arrived at the Arctic tundra that I was talking about down below. You see that the trees are gone. It's just a lot of alpine grass and moss. If you look closely, you can see a few other little flowering plants that are past the flowering stage. And a lot of rocks. And the rocks have a green tint to them. That is a moss-like organism called lichen, L-I-C-A-G-N. And the rocks are called mica schist. And they have a mineral in them called mica, which in the sunshine gives off a very bright white reflection. So back in the early days, the early settlers saw that reflection, those reflections from down below, and they dubbed these the White Mountains. So that's where the White Mountains get their name. It has nothing to do with snow. You can drive your car up this mountain. There is an auto road, Mount Washington Auto Road. It's an 8-mile road up to the summit. It climbs the east side of the mountain, the opposite side from us. And you can do that if you dare. It's a bit of a white-knuckle affair in some places. It's very windy and twisty with hairpin turns. It's a dirt road for a portion. And on the down mountain side of those turns, they don't have any guardrails. So it actually predates the Cog Railway. It opened in 1861 originally as a stagecoach road. Now the summit is up to our right, and depending on how this fog blows around, we might get a glimpse of the Sherman Adams building as we're going up. It's pretty much up between 1 and 2 o'clock to our right. And so that again is our destination. On the other side of the Adams building is another one of these rock cairns. It has a sign extending from the top of it. It marks the true summit of Mount Washington at 6288. And so if you want to say you touch the very top of the mountain, when you get off the train, walk straight through the entrance to the Adams building, the breezeway there, right to the other side, and you'll see it right there. Even in this fog, it's hard to miss. Just beyond that, there's a historic building called the Tip Top House, built 1953. That's where Henry Burt published the Among the Clouds newspaper, and it's been restored to its original appearance, which was as an annex to the Summit House Hotel. And so you can go in there and see the old 19th century bunk rooms and kitchen and dining. See more of these cairns crossing the tracks right here. And there's the Sherman Adams building to the right. That castle-like turret on this end of the building houses the instruments for the Mount Washington Weather Observatory. And the rooftop is an observation deck. There's a very easy ramp to walk up to get up there. So those cairns crossing the tracks right back there mark the Appalachian Trail. And for those of you who don't know, the Appalachian Trail is a roughly 2,180-mile hiking trail that begins way down south on Springer Mountain in Georgia. There goes a car along the auto road. It begins on Springer Mountain in Georgia, and it goes all the way to the summit of Mount Katahdin in northern Maine. And every year in the springtime, thousands of people set out from Springer Mountain, hoping to thru-hike it all the way to Maine. Only a small fraction of them actually succeed in making it all the way. Those that do usually take between 4 and 6 months to complete it. And most of them would have passed through here already, usually in July and August, but there may be some stragglers or late beginners. So you might see a thru-hiker or two at the summit. They're pretty easy to pick out. Typically they have large backpacks. The guys have very thick beards, and they give off a particularly offensive stench. Alright, so we're going to be reaching the summit here in just a couple of minutes. Let me brief you on what's going to be happening. You're going to have approximately 1 hour to spend at the summit. And I emphasize the word approximately. The departure will not be down to the minute. And that 1 hour begins ticking when you get off the train. So check your watches when you get off. And I recommend that you prepare yourselves for reboarding about 5 to 10 minutes ahead of time, an hour ahead. And you will not be coming back down on this train because we'll be heading back down the mountain right away. It'll be a different train, one of the 11:30 trains coming up to pick you up. It should be at the same platform that we let you off at, but if there's any question about any of that, you can ask any of the COG personnel up here, and they'll be happy to get you properly situated. It helps them if you tell them that you have 1030B tickets. That's what it says on your tickets. B is in boy, the B platform, and that'll help them get you to the right place. This is a little memorial here to one of the earliest of the casualties here on Mount Washington, 1855. Daughter of a judge from Maine. She perished of exposure right here, within about 30 yards of the Summit House Hotel, which was standing at the time. But she had no idea in fog like this where she was. Alright, we have one more switch to go through here, and then we'll reach the platform. When we get to the platform, I'll be hopping off. I'll be signaling Joe to our stopping point. And I ask that everybody remain on the train until I get back on the train and give you the go-ahead to get off. And anything that you leave us in recognition of a job well done, well not at all expected, is greatly appreciated. Will be split evenly between Joe and I. And I ask that you watch your step getting off the train. You know these steps are kind of steep. Footing down below is a little gravelly and uneven. And so if anybody wants or needs any assistance getting off the train, let me know and I'll be glad to help you out here. So enjoy your hour up here at the summit. And again, keep one eye on your watch.
And what is the other track used for up here? Just stacking them?
You're going to see the steam train is on the other track.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
So basically, if we have more than 3 trains up here, we need to use that spur track. So. The steamer will be departing just ahead of these 2 trains, so if you're interested in seeing that, stick around outside. The entrance to the Adams building is directly to our right here, folks. You'll see, you can't miss it. About 15 yards to the right of the train. So enjoy the summit. It's been a pleasure having you aboard, and enjoy the rest of the experience on the COG today. Have a great day, folks.
slower, does it go down the same speed as the biodiesel?
The steamer goes about 3 miles an hour. We do 5.
So it's still slower down, going down